IVM.
Hi everybody, just wanted to ask everyone for a quick favor. We're running a brand survey right now and would really appreciate it if you could let us know what you think about the advertising on IVM. Go to ivmpodcast.com/survey and do let us know. As part of this, we'll be selecting 10 random participants and sending them some IVM swag, so do fill out those surveys.
This is Storytellers and Story Sellers live on tape. You're listening to me, Vineet on the IVM Podcast Network. Welcome to our kids content special. This is, after all, Children's Day week. If you aren't aware, India celebrates Children's Day on the 14th of November to mark the birth date of India's first Prime Minister and freedom fighter, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. Today's episode is taken from a conversation I had earlier this year at the India Kids Summit Season 2. I sat down to discuss kids entertainment and OTT, the right content formula, with folks from Chingari, White Rivers Media, from Victor-Tango, Excel Entertainment, and Hungama Digital. It was a fabulous conversation talking about what are the challenges that we're currently facing when programming for kids, which direction this whole space is moving in, what are the innovations that are possible today, and how the space of gaming is encroaching upon what used to be the traditional kids content space. Watch out for a great conversation. Stay tuned right after these messages for the Storytellers and Story Sellers Kids Content Special on Children's Day.
$100. That's all it takes to begin your journey with Bitcoin and Ethereum. No, really. With CoinSwitch, you can start investing in over 100 cryptocurrencies with just 100 rupees. On top of that, there are zero charges for deposits and withdrawals, so you can trade, buy, sell, however and whenever you want. All of this, plus their extremely intuitive interface, makes CoinSwitch the perfect app for beginners in the crypto space. But don't take my word for it. Just download CoinSwitch for free and try it out for yourself. If you'd like more information on cryptocurrencies, tune into a show about crypto with me, Rohan Joshi, my new adventure on IVM Podcasts. CoinSwitch, kuch to badlega.
So glad to be here at the Kids Content Summit and delighted to be hosting this with leading luminaries from the ecosystem. Big hello to all of you and welcome to the panel. I've got a bunch of questions for you guys, and I'm sure you have some very interesting insights to add in. I think I want to get started by asking you guys something that, COVID has affected all of us, right? The way we do business, there's no segment or sector untouched by it, right? I want to get started, and I'll start with Soumini. What are your notes on how the kids content space has changed in this sort of pre and post-COVID scenario? What are your sort of top-line notes that you've seen in terms of behaviors or formats or innovation? We can get started there. Soumini, we start with you.
Yeah, hi. Good evening, everybody. Actually, I can see there's a little bit of a delay, but I hope you guys can hear. I think, the biggest change that I would see, especially when it comes to kids and education, we're seeing how everything has gone digital. So I think there's such a thin line between education on Zoom and education through an OTT app. And, for someone like us through Hungama Kids, where we've always looked at our content largely as infotainment rather than just pure entertainment, it has been, a bit of a journey. And obviously, I think parents are getting pretty anxious about the fact that they're already on a device all the time. Now should we even allow them to continue to be on devices, trying to learn or go beyond the books in that sense? But I think the fact remains is, education at one time, which used to be called distance learning, has now become the only kind of learning. So it is possibly our responsibility as all of us as players to look at how can we, keep the anxious parents, calm and enable, content in a way that the child feels, entertained, but the parent also is assured that it's not, unnecessary content, or it's not content that's going to mess up with their minds even more. But yeah, the space has, of course, we've seen, someone like Wood Kids, who's been very, very active. And of course, a lot of the kids channels as well have, there have been new shows that have come up. But the space is still a little nascent, I would imagine, because most people who have started adopting OTT have moved more towards the fact that they can't go to theaters and watch their entertainment. So kids is still going to have its, long tail journey in that sense.
Right. I want to bring Deepak in here and get your notes on this. I mean, what I'm hearing from Soumini is that everything's going digital. Lines are blurring. What is education? What is infotainment? What is entertainment?
Yeah. So I have a daughter who is 6 years old. Okay. So I haven't spent that much of time when I was working, and now work from home. I've spent a lot of time with her. So I've been monitoring what's happening, what she's watching, what kind of content she's doing. So I've worked in a kids channel before, in an international channel basically. So the kind of content over there and the kind of content we have, it's more of like they have a very infotainment content which I would love her to see it. But the kind of content which we have on our television channels, or I haven't seen much OTT, but the content is more of a filmy dubbing, voices and this thing, and the kind of reaction which kids have. So right now, whatever she watches, when she goes with her friends, she uses that language. So we have to be very particular. And there is, as said before, there is a big opportunity. I would love to pay for a content which my daughter will learn something new manners, or the way people respect, take something out of it. So that is very important content. And initially we used to say, "Yaar, mat dekho, mat dekho." I mean, they are whole day on their. I bought an iPad for her school. She's whole day on it, and we don't have a control. Since my wife is busy on her stuff, I'm busy on my stuff. But that's why if I give her like a good OTT, if I have a good OTT platform which I can say, "Yaar, ye content acha hai," it will be helpful. I don't mind spending her like 2 hours on that OTT platform. And right now, I think so it's missing.
For sure. Your thoughts, Shrenik? While we round off the opening segment, what we're hearing is that things are changing and things are complex, but love to get your thoughts.
So firstly, I think this is a very, very big segment. Kids as a segment, I think it's about 15% of country's active internet audience, right? It is humongous, right? In fact, I was reading this research by Kantar along with Viacom 18, which said that about 87% of Indian parents agree that mobile helps immensely for their kids' learning, and almost equal amount of equal percentage of parents also agreed, and this fact has changed post-COVID, that mobile, in fact, helps them learn faster than a book. So I think if we were to take all the learnings, I think this, for me, especially, this is one of the biggest learnings out of COVID, that, parents have started adopting to the fact that one can learn with the phone, right? So they are, while they've been digitally native, I think they're becoming all the more digitally habituated.
Which is a great thing, right? Tabassum, want to bring you in here?
Yeah, so I would say, just user behavior pre-pandemic and post-pandemic. Pre-pandemic, everybody thought tech was displacing the kid from doing something better, something physical, something skill-based. But now screen is the vehicle for everything. So even parents have understood it as not all screen time is equal screen time. So when you're attending school, when you're doing a school-based project, or when you're watching a family entertainment or movie, that cannot be counted as the kid's personal screen time. The screen time needs to be separate. And yes, we still lack good opportunities in India for good screen time for kids. And what we also need to understand is audience that we're talking about is not native Indian content consumers only. These kids are actually consuming content across the globe. So they're not alien to the fact that there is some fantastic show out there, which is probably American, and they're watching it here. So I think compared to adults or even young adults who are consuming a lot of local content, kids today are consuming a lot of international content also. So they know how to differentiate good and bad content.
Let me ask you this, and it's a very interesting point that's emerging from what all of you said. And I'm going to throw it to Deepak because we haven't heard him so far. But kids now have dedicated screen time, right? It's an opportunity that we must program for. No more is it just animated stuff going on Cartoon Network or Chota Bheem or wherever else, right? The tastes and choices have evolved very, very quickly. Have you seen any such innovations in the content space that caught your eye that says, hey, this is a brand new way of serving the kids the specific screen time? Deepak, I'd love to get your thoughts.
Yeah, so in between I've been watching, so I spend like 1 hour in the evening with my daughters to watch content. So I want to understand what she's watching. And there are a few shows which is very international, which I saw on Amazon Kicks. So my daughter wants to be a football player now. She saw that the content and said, I want to be a football player. And she started pressurized me to get a football, and she started going down and playing football with the kids. So this kind of content will work in India actually if we make it. We have very like the skate girl, which I guess I forgot the name of the movie. Recently I saw. So she was like, "Arey, ha, this is good." You know, the kind of
Netflix film that came out.
Yeah.
physical activity more than watching whole day like, "Ha, isne ye bola, isne wo bola." It's not. So there should be something out of it. So internationally, I stayed for a few years. Of what I understood over there, they prepare their kids for next whatever they want to do, what kind of choices they have, instead of just entertainment. And we shouldn't, because we are creating the next generation, whatever. So whatever we serve right now to them, they will act on it and they will grow on it. So whatever you want to put right now, make it like a productive kind of thing instead of DIY. I'm just saying this example of multiple genres, but there'll be a story. There is good content happening in India also, but it's not getting highlighted right now. What I feel.
Right. Rajeev, I want to bring you in and get your thoughts on why do you think that's not happening? I mean, like we've heard, there are examples of Indian content, international content, but what kind of thrust does this space need for those to get highlighted and to be useful, not just entertaining, but also useful to our kids and in their future?
I would say a lot has been thought of earlier as well, and today as well, while listening to all the panelists over here. There's a lot that is happening already. What constraint I think is that everyone wants to attempt it, but the right kind of content, the right kind of medium, and especially after pandemic, where we know now that the kids are online, they are watching the content, they've seen the pattern, how it works. So now the focus has to be more on the content, more on the educative infotainment, where the people and the parents and the kids, all of them are attracted towards it. And then there is a kind of I would say, you will start relating to Indian superheroes as well. It's always that, okay, there is a Doraemon, there is something else, there's something else. But hardly there is any Indian superhero which is visible. So this is the right time, I would say, that last year has taught us a lot many things, and a new wave has created all this and emerging digital as an emerging media for the kids, especially, I would say. The learning starts right from preschool, and most of the preschools are now online. So that's where I think the content, the OTT, and the medium of digital has already started.
Right. I have actually two very separate questions that popped into my head when you talked about this, right? I want to talk about the first one, which seems to me like an opportunity. Like you said, schooling has changed. It's all online. If you look at online teaching models in Korea or in China, they look and feel very different, very evolved, very content forward in that sense, right? While we're still teacher dependent, we're still sort of taking what was the offline curriculum and putting it online and expecting it to work the same way. Are you all looking at that as an opportunity? And again, it's an open question, but do you think that's an opportunity per se for us?
I would say definitely that's an opportunity, because see, again, while the digital has opened up a lot many doors, especially if you look at the VFX oriented films, the market has evolved. What we were doing 10 years back is now not the same market. We've evolved with the technology, with the kind of visual. The similar pattern has to be for the kids when it comes to the content. Right now, we need to make the parents first habitual of that content. The kids needs to get synced with the OTTs, where digital, like Tabassum said, that there's a screen time which needs to be useful enough now to bring the knowledge to them and to make that medium as a powerful medium for a learning.
Right.
Yeah, so, I think when it comes to content, it's so subjective. And when we look at ourselves, the way we went into the kids space, we started with a YouTube channel, and then we kind of went into trying to build it as an OTT, destination. And we realized on YouTube, we were way behind from most of the players. You had Chuchu TV, you had Rajshri, you had so many other players and then you had regional players as well. I think, first of all, one has to look at how can you create a positioning which is different from what the others are doing. You can't try to match up with them, with everyone, especially in terms of production quality, if you cannot. It's like, I think one of the biggest reasons Indian cartoon films have not done that well is because, one, for some reason, I feel they speak down to the children. You look at some of the Walt Disney movies, movies like Wall E or Up, they are so philosophical. There's so much. I mean, even an adult would watch. I'm a big fan of animated films. So. So for me, it really makes a lot of difference. There are very few. I mean, I think, of course, with Chota Bheem, they've managed to do something, which is fun. It's young, and yet there's some interesting takeaway. I believe your content has to be more in terms of what are you trying to communicate first. I think that is a very critical part before you try to look at how do you communicate, because I think today you can get away. I mean, I'm sorry, I think there's someone here from Chingari, right? Do we have a person here who's representing Chingari? So, I mean, just to give you an example of when you look at short form video platforms today, right? I don't think it's at all about the production quality. It's about what that content is about. And one can, I'm not saying get away with murder, but I think if you've got your philosophy and what you're trying to communicate in place first, you can, look at a simpler way. It can be 2D animation, it can be infographics, it can just be motion graphics, or it can be just script driven. It's as simple as that. So, I mean, that's the way I look at how one can look at also building the kids' space. And I see most of the players today focusing largely till the age group of 8 and 9. But if you are able to look at kids today, I would say even your 13 to 18-year-old are kids. They're so confused. They don't know what they want. They don't know how to get it, but they feel that they know it all, so they also need a certain kind of hand-holding, I would believe.
Yeah, I totally agree with Soumini. The tween segment is, I think, something that everybody has just completely ignored, and it's such a big opportunity area. And even if, Vineet, if we come back to the thought that you had about educational content being an opportunity area, it is so big that no one has really been able to crack it right. Whether you look at formats like interactive video, or you look at learning by doing, there are just so many things out there all waiting to be explored. So huge opportunity areas, all of them.
I have a completely parallel point, I think, which is a huge opportunity alongside education for kids. I think animated content for emotional and ethical development of kids could be a very, very big segment. Right? Yes. Think of it, the way Disney makes content. So, from timeless messages of love, family, acceptance, failures, right? The way beautifully them, kind of showcase these things via their content. I think that in itself is a huge opportunity, and a lot of things can be co-curated or curated specially for India. Right. So, and who says that school education only has to be books, right? One can also teach emotional development to kids, right? I think accepting failures as a subject in itself can be a very big subject.
For sure, I think the opportunity is massive, no matter what the subject matter is. The fact that the delivery pipeline has changed means the entire opportunity has shifted forward, right? No more is it Dora the Explorer saying, where is it? Find it on the screen with fake interactivity. You can actually have second screen behaviors built into whatever you're trying to do, right? I want to turn this conversation into two areas that, according to me, and again, I'm an outsider, you're the expert, so I would love to hear your thoughts here. To me, there are two areas which are both threats and could be places which are actually hand in glove with education. These two areas to me are YouTube. I mean, largest catchment area for anybody. I've got a 8-year-old nephew at home, and he learns words that I did not imagine myself knowing at 8 years old, right? And he gets it from Minecraft. He's watching Minecraft videos. He's getting it from slime videos or somewhere else, right? So YouTube has become sort of a de facto education channel, right? And the second space is gaming, right? And we talked about interactivity a little bit before, but the way these kids are learning now, whether it is young kids or whether it is the teens, interactivity is sort of part of their language of learning, right? How are players in the space looking at these two? Are they considered threats? Are they considered inspiration? Are they considered the future? I'd love to get your thoughts, and I'll start with Tabassum on this one.
So interactivity is just the new way kids consume content. So we have to be interactive. There is no more passive content consumption, especially as far as kids are concerned. And honestly, gaming can really teach you a lot of things if it is done the right way, if it is done with the right limits and the right kind of games are played. I think gaming can really teach you a lot. As far as YouTube is concerned, just if you look at good quality or well-produced content and the not so well-produced content, because the percentage of the latter is so high and it's just fed to the consumers based on algorithm, I don't really think that's the best way to consume content. I wouldn't want my kids to be consuming content that way just because, some algorithm is choosing what they should be watching. So I think curated content is the way to go. Even if you actually look at YouTube Kids, which is a kid-specific platform, I still think it's not really doing its job well. It's not meeting the opportunity that there is. But I think, gaming definitely can teach kids a lot. And coming back to what Shrenik was also saying about, teaching values, teaching things like, team spirit or sportsmanship or learning to accept loss, accepting losing at a game. So various things like that, actually, you get to learn through gaming. And not just gaming, if you look at the whole idea of learning by doing, if you look at any kind of, like the content we make at DIY is all about teaching kids different skills. And for every minute of content that you're consuming on the platform, there are enough challenges to make you go offline and actually apply that learning. So these are things that actually parents appreciate and are looking forward for their kids.
Fantastic. I'd love to get other thoughts in on YouTube and gaming. I think, like I said, to me, they are the biggest threats or the biggest leading indicators of where the space is going. So yeah, Rajeev, your thoughts on this?
I would say that while we have the threats, there are also the opportunities. YouTube, especially the way Tabassum explained that there are a lot of opportunities that needs to be explored and they are not being utilized properly. First, over the past 1 year, most of the parents have understood the patterns, and if the presence against the screen or the content, whatever is there, if it is viable or not viable, whether the kid is being able to make his presence, understand the content. So all that pattern is already there. Now it's all about communicating it right. It's all about where we are focusing and what kind of understanding is coming across with the content. So I would take that as an opportunity. Threats, of course, we've seen like how PUBG has impacted a lot many youngsters. So that was the biggest threat. So more than threat, opportunity is always a focus.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I feel actually that there's a place for everybody. I think the point that Tabassum made about even YouTube Kids, in spite of it being called kids, not really. I think the biggest gap there is the age appropriateness. I remember when my son was 10 and he's still, he's 14 and he's still hooked on to YouTube, but he's also a gamer. And now he watches games on YouTube. So, there's always going to be those challenges. But I think at the end of the day, the biggest opportunity that I see today, which even I feel, as a business, we need to tap very strongly, is the regional side of things. Because, like right now, for example, our content has been largely English. And I have taken time to try and make it, Tamil-centric or Punjabi-centric or Malayalam-centric. But I think that ideally should be the next step, especially if you are an OTT player in the kids space, and someone who's like, we see a lot of OTT players that are acquiring content from television or YouTube. But if you're somebody who's creating content from scratch, then I think you have the opportunity to give it any kind of direction, Gaming, of course, is a different giant altogether, and one will have to see whether they can allocate or get some time from the child for something that you're doing, which may not be gaming. So it's a good competitive landscape, I would believe.
Wonderful. Let's take a quick break right there, and we'll be back talking to these luminaries from the kids content space right after these messages.
Hello, everybody. It's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. An app for extramarital relationships sounds interesting? Well, it exists, and it's booming. On GBCD, Farad and Sunetru talked to Sybil Shadil from Gleeden, a dating service primarily marketed to women. On Simplified, the gang discussed the phenomena of sports washing illustrated by the recent Saudi takeover of the Newcastle United Football Club. On the Life Manifesto, Sarina explains various lessons from Charlie Plum's life and how we can apply them to our own lives. On Say No to Drama, Chetna is here to slice the drama around workaholics and help understand the consequences of our choices. And learn how to simplify your personal finances on Paisa Vaisa as Anupam speaks to co-founders of 5 Money, Sujit Narayan and Sumit Golani. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors on the network this week: Cred, Bank of Baroda, Quarter, CoinSwitch, Kuber, Slate Coffee, Intel, Kotak Mahindra Bank, and Oxfam India. Thank you so much for making this possible.
You've all pointed out certain challenges in this space, right? To me, there are a few challenges that are universal from both as parents and as business people, right? Content safety is one of them, especially with sort of non-linear delivery with YouTube or Facebook or other places. Age-appropriate content, like I said. The downstream impact of consuming that content does it have the right ethics, values, etc., etc. How are you at your companies looking at solving for this, and what are sort of buzzwords or guidelines that you're putting in place to guide this going forward?
So we've actually taken a very tactical approach on it because, like I said, when we decided to launch our platform, we had to look at how are we going to be different. So our biggest difference was that we cater to kids from 0 to 18 years, but broken into 5 age groups. So there's content for 0 to 2, 2 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 13, and 13 to 18. And then we also have content for parents from a kid's perspective. How do you deal with your child in different situations? The core other philosophy into the content, they're all short form. So even though we have original bedtime stories, the maximum duration will be about 6 to 7 minutes. So the intent has always been, so even from the app or the website, when you access, as you enter, you can decide which age group do you want to enter into, and you will see content accordingly. So that's the kind of, I would say, age appropriateness that we've tried to keep. It doesn't stop you from going into other areas, but at least the entry point has been kind of guided in that sense. As a parent, I was extremely critical on this point that the content has to be, and thankfully even the app stores today are the number of times we've been rejected by iOS is not funny, and they'll come back with all sorts of little minute things. So there's been a lot. I think the diligence is super high when it comes to kids anyway. But it's great. I think it's time because there's so much of nonsense going on in the world. The kind of games these kids play, you cannot stop them. So you're somewhere as players in the industry, we've got to take that responsibility.
Right. I'd love to get a producer side thought from you guys as well. Shrenik, maybe you can.
So I can give you a marketeer side thought.
Yeah, marketeer side thought. Sure.
Yeah. So we work with a lot of brands, and I think one of the latest buzzword which I've been listening is supervised mod, rather than a simple parent control viewing. So I think I'm sure YouTube recently launched a supervised mode for parent control viewing, where you can actually get a kid to you can get a parent to supervise what a kid is watching. Right? There are multiple other safety features across platforms, like a kid's safety pin feature. Right? So you will not be allowed to watch content at a certain hour. Right. So those are the things I think needs to be considered. And I think those are the things one needs to encourage because, I think Tabassum rightly mentioned, we can't have a child's education controlled by an algorithm. Right. So it has to be a good mix. Right. So even a parent has to be equally involved in, every minute or maybe every hour a child is, investing in watching some content. So I think that's one of the things which one needs to work on.
The problem is, I understand. I've been trying to, take my daughter off from YouTube because the kind of content whatever she said is perfect. The kind of content we don't know. That's why I made sure that she watched certain OTT apps only. So and even parents right now, we understand. We are from content space. We understand. Ye dikhana, ye nahi dikhana. But the other parents who are not from a content space, they don't have time for it. Right now, the main problem with parents is they don't have time. Right. And they can't monitor. So that's what, if there's, but still there are good stories in India. If we have good content, but we have to produce that, and someone has to take that lead and produce that content and make it happen.
I want to ask you something from an app perspective, actually, Deepak, Chingari perspective, right? How are you guys keeping these concerns in mind? Because these apps are, again, like you said, your daughter has an iPad, she's free to download whatever she likes, and these concerns stay no matter which delivery platform or which app you're consuming. So from a Chingari perspective, how are you guys sort of solving for this?
So there are two ways we monitor each video content. Maybe it can make a kind of algorithm wise, and we have manual screening also. So that's how we are screening every content which is going on our time, basically the feed. So this is how we are tackling it. And I come from a BBC background. I worked on CVBs, BBC. So the kind of their what we call compliances are, we are trying to follow that. So there's nothing, and we are very particular what kind of content will go, how it will affect the kids, and because we are catering to little older, audience like 13 to 18 kind of, or 18 to 30. So we are very particular about what's going on our feed. So there are two ways of moderating. One is like a kind of algorithm which is monitoring, and the manual moderation is also there.
Well, that's great to know. I know we're about the end of this, so I'm going to turn back this whole thing into what is the title of our panel and ask you very pointedly, what is the right formula, right? I want short, snappy answers. Think of this as, I do a segment on my podcast called Water with Vineet. So think of it like that kind of rapid fire segment. But yeah, let me get this started with Rajeev, right? What is, according to you, the right formula now for the next maybe 10, 15 years that we're seeing technology, gaming, animated content, values, ethics, education? It's such a mouthful to talk about, right? Yeah. And then picking out of that, how do you get to that right formula? And what, according to you, are the levers of that right formula?
I would say that it's a blend of most of the elements what you mentioned, like how the film market has evolved after years. And we've cracked the formula of low budget films, high budget films, mega films. This is also a kind of genre that needs to be explored. There is always a perception, even from the production side, when I say from the producer's end, that there's a lot of the thought that animated content is an expensive content. So most of the people who want to attempt even, they're not likely to attempt. The people want to say the stories, but because a perception is that it's a expensive content, they're not finding it right. They're not going to attempt also. So I think the kind of media which has evolved now, which is a digital, there will be a lot which will come across, and a blend of the story, content, animation, cost, everything has to be taken care. That's the right formula where the content will also work, and of course the audience is always there. That there's a huge market in India.
Right. Wonderful. I'm going to toss this over to Shrenik. From a marketer's perspective, I'm going to throw in an extra googly in there. Is merchandising still a big part of the formula, or is that something that's gone sometime in the past? Your thoughts, please.
No. So I think I had an answer on similar lines. One of the magic formulas, I believe, for kids content as a segment is creating a lot of localized characters, which has deep connection with our culture. Right. While of course we need to, we need to keep evolving the culture. One need not necessarily follow the age-old practices, but one has to evolve, a lot of things which are happening in the culture, and those things needs to be implemented using the right kids content. Right. So I think that's point number one. And that brings me to another point, which will answer your merchandising, as a business, creating an entire ecosystem for kids. Right. So it doesn't end at content. Right. I think the whole journey starts with content. Right. So, how do you take, the content which is there to actual life of the kid, right? Going all the way up to there. Right. So I think if one can, have pure digital only products, physical only products, and phygital products, a good mix of all of these three.
Wonderful. Tabassum, I want to bring you in for your closing notes and tell us your secret formula for kids content.
So, as far as secret formula is concerned, we believe in making kids do what they learn. So a lot of it's very action oriented. Everything that you watch, you need to go out and actually do it, come back and show us what you've done. So there's a lot of peer-to-peer learning, there's community, there is, if kids feed off each other's energies really well. So that is something that we believe as our formula of content creation. But overall, I feel it's the time for us to have more IP in the kids space. I think we've overdone the whole acquisition and dubbing and all of that. We've seen too much of that. We have good storytellers in this country. We have great technical expertise in this country. We really need to have our own iconic shows. I think that is something that I would like to, that would be my closing notes on this.
Wonderful. I'm looking forward to that on the screen. As much as I love my dubbed versions of Dexter from my childhood, I would love to see something that is more native to India.
We can have a Dexter of our own, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Right. Deepak, your notes.
So basically, what I look for is good content. As Tabassum said, we have stories. We need to execute them properly. I remember when I did ACK Heroes animated version. That was the first animated version we did. So that kind of stuff I worked on, and I was very happy that what we were reading, comic book, it's becoming animated with a voice and everything. So kids are very impressed. So that is only a treatment, but we have good stories. We want to work on it. I know kids will accept it, and even the parents will accept it. So at least that, even what I believe is if I put 100 rupees, I will put 100 rupees for a good content. I don't mind buying that content.
Wonderful. And last but not least, Soumini, your closing notes for us. I'm looking for what is the right formula for kids content from you.
I think I wouldn't single out content as the only strategy. I would want to look at how can I keep this as something which maybe 10 years down the line still exists. We hear of so many platforms and brands coming and going. So prudency is something which I think is vital. And if you can continue to sustain and create content with it being impactful and, people being able to get some takeaway from it every time they come back and experience that content, I think that is going to be the core formula. You've got to be able to find ways. And, in our case, for example, it is a subscription-based app. So the more we see the subscriptions, either people coming back and subscribing or new people coming in, but that's going to be a big play. And of course, how can we keep evolving the platform, and I'm not in this race that abhi sab kuch ho raha hai, my product has to have it all, because, we all know thinking about it is quick and easy, but actually getting it developed and putting it out there is a journey, right? So I think the aim is to just make sure that we are able to keep ourselves constantly evolving, staying engaged, looking at how we can engage with every subscriber that is coming onto the platform. And I am a strong believer in collaborations, of all kinds. So looking at like-minded people who can help, like Shrenik said, the ecosystem needs to be built so that people look at the kids space not just as acha, inke parents se paisa mil sakta hai, but more on, are we playing, is there a purpose behind what we're trying to do? I think that is what has to be the agenda.
Wonderful. I really want to get one last question in before I let you guys go. And that's, I want you to give us one show or one IP that you think is really inspirational, that you think could be the touchstone of what we can develop. I want it to be really short and snappy because I know we're out of time. And so one IP from you guys that we should check out as an indicator for the future of kids content. Tabassum, we go with you.
For me, I think Sesame Street has always been that IP that I've always looked up to and admired, because it's so old and it's still so relevant. And with all the iterations that it has had globally, it still stays true to its purpose. And yeah, I'd like to make a show like that someday.
More Elmo and Big Bird for us. Over to you, Rajeev.
Tom and Jerry, the classic example, still going, and I think it has a huge potential to come across franchising with multiple other ventures, with making your own Indianized content out of it. A lot.
Did you watch the live action movie that came out?
Yes, I did.
Wonderful, that was.
It's a wonderful piece, yes.
Yeah. Over to you, Shrenik.
I think Mythbusters Junior, if the same is adapted to India, I think it will have tremendous potential.
Wonderful. Deepak?
I'll go for any show on CBBS. Right now, I haven't watched the bigger shows right now. But for me, right now, CBBS, any content which is very learning and very informative, and the kind of production value they have is good.
Fantastic. And finally, Soumini.
I think, the older Walt Disney movies that used to be actually done with, by hand and not all your CGI and all of that. You still watch Snow White and, even The Fox and the Hound and all of these kind of movies. They're still so beautiful. You see the expressions, I think that's something. But if I was to look at a particular IP, I feel from an Indian perspective, I think Chota Bheem has really done a great job. And they continue to sustain. So, hats off to them. They are a good example of how you keep evolving.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your insights and for sharing the IPs that you find valuable. I think this is super informative and super insightful session. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to the Kids Content Summit for having us.
Thank you, guys.
I hope you had some fun.
Thank you. Absolutely. Thank you.
Habits? Routines? How exactly do they help us get better? Well, to simplify it for you, tune in to the Habit Coach podcast. I am Ashton Doctor and I'm going to be here to help you get better daily with some simple, easy to do habits that you can easily adapt to your life. So tune in to the Habit Coach podcast from Monday to Friday because I believe that awesome lives start with awesome habits.
सफर, रास्ते, मंजिल और मुकाम, अक्सर ये हमसे कुछ कहना चाहते हैं, पर हम हैं कि अपनी रोजमर्रा की जिंदगी में इन्हें सुनने से कतराते हैं। नमस्ते दोस्तों, मेरा नाम है केशव चतुर्वेदी और मैं आपको ले चलूंगा कुछ ऐसे सफर पर जहां आपको एक नया नजरिया मिलेगा सफर और मंजिलों को देखने का। आइए इन किस्से कहानियों में डूब जाएं। हर मंगलवार और शुक्रवार